Hello, I'm Sarah Lee.
And I'm Josh.
Welcome to Dark History, and today we are looking at the case of H.H. Holmes.
Triple H! What? Man, I'm so happy we're going to get to actually talk about a pro wrestler.
Yeah, we're not.
Come on, brother. Let me tell you something, brother.
Oh
I'm
my
gonna
God.
get in there and I'm gonna scream your neck. You know, something like that.
No, this dude's so much cooler than Triple H.
That wasn't Triple H. That's Macho Man Randy Savage.
I don't know.
What is wrong with you?
I'm a girl.
Okay. That's very not cool. He kind of, Triple H kind of.
Are we going to start sexism war on YouTube? Is that what we're going to do?
All right, so good old Triple H here. Not the pro wrestler, right?
No, he's supposed to be America's first serial killer. He isn't obviously America's first serial killer, but he's definitely like the first notorious serial killer. And it's really difficult with this one because it's hard to think of him as an actual person because he's so like super villain. It's like something out of like a Batman comic or something. It's insane.
All right.
Obviously, I'll just say a lot of the records do contradict each other because this was a long, long time ago. So some of this is speculation, but I've done my best to piece together the facts and read between the lines.
All right. So. Well, we all do like to read between the lines.
Yeah, but I have been reading and watching things on this particular man since I was about 10. I mean, I love this guy, which sounds horrible because he's obviously a horrible person.
Well,
like I said, it's that detachment. I think of him as like, I don't know, some super villain rather than a serial killer. So anyway, he was born in 1861 in New Hampshire. And his name when he was born was Herman Webster Mudgett.
Mudgett.
Yeah, that's an awesome name.
So,
Herman Webster Mudgett. Like.
So was this a tall guy?
I don't think he was tall. I think he was quite short. Apparently, he was really good looking. Like all the girls liked him.
So we figured it out. His nickname was Midget in high school. And then, he declared himself to a life of crime, and the fastest way to do that was to be a doctor.
I mean, he did get bullied in high school. He was from quite a privileged family. His father was an alcoholic. His mother was super religious, but they had money.
Very privileged.
They had money.
All right. Well, what did they do for the money? Was it old money, or was he just like?
I'm not sure. They were English settlers. I think they came over with quite a bit of money.
Oh. Okay.
His dad was a postmaster at the time, and his mum was just a housewife, I think. But yeah, he didn't seem to like his parents very much. But yeah, he did get bullied at school. He was like super intelligent, apparently. He was scared of doctors when he was a child, like terrified. And one time the children locked him in a doctor's office with a skeleton. And he said this was the life-changing moment. Like he became obsessed with the human body and death and, this skeleton stayed in his mind.
And when was this? You said it's 1800s?
Yeah, he was born in 1861.
Yeah, well, no, I'm just 1800s, so I'm thinking to myself, okay, you're locked in the room, a doctor's office.
And back then the skeletons are
that's what I'm getting
skeletons.
At. That's what I'm getting at. It's like you're sitting there like, holy crap, that's a dead thing.
Yeah, it's like they didn't have like the plastic things they had now. What had happened is people would take a dead person's skeleton and bleach it and sell it to a doctor.
Well, I mean, that's not totally uncommon. I mean, people still sell their body to science. And,
yeah.
That seems like a quick buck that I wouldn't want to have anything to do with. But
so yeah, that was the time he said he got really fascinated with death and he decided he was going to become a doctor. Okay. Started experimenting on animals, like practicing surgeries and stuff.
So he wanted to be a vet.
No, he was just. It's a common thing with a lot of serial killers that they torture or abuse or hurt animals in some way. Like they practice on animals first.
Okay.
Like before they ever do anything to a human.
Okay.
It is quite. It's one of the. Oh, I forget his name now. There's a triad of things that if children display all three of these signs, then they're apparently way more likely to be a serial killer. And those are animal abuse, bedwetting, and fire, setting fire to things.
Okay, so I can understand, you know, what kid hasn't set fire to something? What
Me.
kid? Yeah, I believe that. What kid
Never.
hasn't set fire to things? What kid hasn't had a bedwetting accident? I mean, I know adults that still
I can
wet the
honestly
bed.
say I
You know?
never set fire to anything, and I definitely never abused any animals.
Oh, okay. So, but you did wet the bed.
Yeah, of course.
And that's what
Every
I'm saying.
kid
Like
wets the bed.
every kid wets the bed at least once. I mean,
Like,
goodness.
I had really bad nightmares when I was little, and I'd wet the bed.
But I mean, when you look at the hurting the child, or the hurting of the animals.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Lack of
It's
humanity, lack
it's
of
usually
empathy.
domesticated animals, they say.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, you
But
can't
yeah,
do that to a friggin' raccoon and expect the same ideas.
I want a pet raccoon.
I bet you do.
Oh, we're never
Yes,
going to get
yes.
to the actual story, are we, today?
For the greatest part of the internet is all of the mass information that we could ever have and ever want at the tip of our fingertips, and you're sitting there watching fat little raccoons eat cat food.
Yeah, I'm getting told it's 10:16, Sarah. Stop watching raccoons. Oh.
All right, so he displayed the three things.
No, well, he didn't.
He didn't?
Because
Okay.
I don't think there's any record of him setting fire to anything.
Okay.
I mean, he could have done. I don't. He set fire to things later,
Okay.
but not as a child. But anyway, that's about all we know on like little Herman. Until he left school and he got married at 17 to a woman named Clara, who came from a very wealthy family, and he married her because she was going to pay his way through medical school.
Okay.
So he went to medical school funded by her in Vermont.
Yeah.
Until he was accepted, I think, on a scholarship to Michigan.
Okay.
So he moved to the University of Michigan, and that's where we start hearing information about him and his story.
All right. At this point, he's what? Early 20s? When
he went to
college or whatever.
Michigan in 1882. So yeah, around that time.
All right.
In his second year, that's when he started realizing that there was a janitor at that school that was accepting these bodies that they practiced on for dissection, because back then that's what you did. Medical school was you went into school, there were dead bodies on a table, and you dissected them.
Well, that's still what they do.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean,
That's really, I couldn't do that.
Well, not to go too deeply into it, but yes, they've they still do it on cats. They
Oh, I know
you have
they
to learn
still
on
like
cats,
do
but
animals.
you do it on humans. That's what I'm saying. You sell your
Ugh.
body to science, and generally it'll be people that smoke too much or have a disease or something, and
and you see
depending on
inside them.
exactly, because what'll end up happening is when they eventually do die, instead of putting them in the ground, they say, okay, well, this person had this disease, we'll pay you this much money for, the rights to your body after you pass.
Okay, so you have to promise me now, if I die before you do not sell my body to anyone.
No. See, this is one of those things where you have to.
Is it like the organ donor thing? So like you decide?
Yes, it's your own decision, although I refuse to be an organ donor.
I am an organ donor. I think I want to change that now.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's up to you.
I put it on like my driving license application when I was 17.
Yeah.
Like things change.
It's funny, and then you always hear that story that when you get into a wreck or something, cops will be like, "Oh yeah, well, he's an organ donor. Save the other guy first." I was like, "Come on, dude. I don't know if I believe that. I don't know if I believe that." But
so anyway, yeah, he realized that because obviously the demand for these cadavers was a lot higher than the supply, the janitor had been taking questionable bodies in for a bit of money.
As you do.
And Herman decided, it was Herman and his friend Robert. Between them, they came up with this quite genius way to make money, and they would steal the cadavers after taking out a life insurance policy in some random name, because back then the records weren't what they are now, and insurance fraud was easy.
I can imagine.
Like super easy. So they'd take out a life insurance policy, steal a cadaver, wait for the cadaver to be found, claim the insurance, and that's how he made his money.
Okay.
And yeah, I know there was an incident where he, just after he finished at Michigan, I'm not even sure if he graduated. I think he just kind of left.
Okay.
Because he was a bit hot, you know.
Hot?
Yeah, like the heat on him because he was stealing these dead bodies.
Okay. Okay, so that's
yeah. So he went to Philadelphia for a short time, and I believe he was working at a pharmacy, having no knowledge whatsoever of pharmaceuticals, and he gave a young customer some pills, and this customer died. And then that's what led him to Chicago, where the story really starts.
Oh, yeah. Actually, now that I'm looking this up,
sorry, yeah,
because
no,
it was a
if
question.
you were looking
it was a question. Yeah, he did graduate from high school at the age of 16. Now that's
No, I know he graduated from high school.
But he went to the University of Vermont. And according to this, he wasn't satisfied with how they did things, and then he went to the University of Michigan.
Yes.
And obtained a degree in medicine and surgery.
Okay.
So he did finish it. Obviously, man, that is a goofy looking dude. I like those bowler hats.
It's the mustache. You cannot get past that mustache.
No, that is one heck of it. Well, you think about it. That was back in those days when having a mustache. I mean, this is in the days of the Wild West.
Yeah, like
Sarah.
he was really classed as one of the most attractive people ever, and to me, I just see this huge mustache, which.
Look, they say that about Ted Bundy, and I still don't see it.
I don't see that either. Ted Bundy was not an attractive man.
All right, so you got to think this is during the Wild West. Everybody had mustaches, because it was so expensive to upkeep that
it was a ridiculous mustache.
Well, yeah, but it was a status symbol. It was like saying, "Hey, I have money. I can keep this and make it look nice."
Well, that's why he did so well and got away with things for so long, because he was educated. He was, he talked very well. He looked the part. He looked like a gentleman. He didn't. Okay. So in 1885, he finally decided to make the move to Chicago, and by this time he had changed his name to Henry Howard Holmes.
Okay.
The Holmes being after Sherlock Holmes, because he was a huge fan of the Arthur Conan Doyle books, which, let's face it, we all are.
Yeah. I think that, I think that Batman's a better detective, but whatever.
Oh, I'm so insulted right now.
No, I'm kidding. Said that just to see the look on your face.
So he moved to Chicago with, his life insurance money, etc. But he got a job in a local pharmacy again. And while he was working there, he purchased a large bit of land that he was going to start the construction of this famous murder hotel on. And it really is quite interesting.
Sounds the part.
During this time, he was known to have committed his first murder, and it was of his friend Robert, who he did the insurance scams with. One day he said they were going to get a cadaver and do this scam, and he murdered Robert and used his body and got $40,000, I think. Which back then is...
Well, you can imagine. That's money.
That's money.
I mean, there's that joke in Million Ways to Die in the West where they bet for $1 and it's like, what, $1? I've never seen $1. That kind of stuff, because you were working on cents at that point.
It's a lot of money.
Of course, they pull out the $1 and everybody takes their hat off and kneels towards it because it's so much money. But yeah, no, sorry.
There's also a rumor that he murdered the owners of this pharmacy because he ended up taking over the pharmacy. This person just disappeared.
Okay.
He said that they'd gone to live with family somewhere, but there's no record of them ever being anywhere.
All right.
So yeah, he started building his hotel, and the plan was that he would have shop fronts on the ground to let out. And the original plan wasn't for a hotel; it was apartments above these shops. But the Chicago World's Fair changed that, and he decided to go the hotel route. So anyway, he started this construction. I've seen the blueprints, and it's absolutely nuts, for want of a better word. He did it in such a way that none of the builders could know what he was building. So he'd be hiring people and then like firing them after they'd done a hallway or a staircase. Or the rumor was that he would kill them before he had to pay them.
Oh, that's very.
There was also, just while I remember, there was a few customers in the pharmacy that apparently paid by check.
Okay.
And what he'd do is he'd add a couple of notes to the ends of these checks and then murder the people.
Okay, assuming that they had that kind of money to cover it.
Yeah, that's always been a funny thing with me. I've always thought, well, what if you
mean, what's the worst that's going to happen? It's going to bounce. You know, if it works for one person but doesn't work for 5 other people, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
You're still making more money than you would have if 5 people paid $100.
I mean, the point is at this time, the man was beyond. He obviously, I don't believe for a minute that Robert Laycock was his first murder, because just to have this plan of this, let's face it, murder maze.
Yeah.
Because that's what it was.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to have already crossed that line quite a few times. So yeah, he arranged for people to build it so that they didn't know what they were building. And when it was finished, he had rooms dedicated to different types of murder. So he'd had like gas piping leading into one room, but then it just been, finishing there and have a gas room. And then he had a hanging room. I don't know how that works, but it was supposedly like you'd go into the room and it would hang you. I don't know how that would even be a thing.
Well, you know what? I'll look up the blueprints.
Oh, the blueprints are crazy.
Because, there are tons of different jokes that every machine in the world can do something. And if,
He had laboratories, he had trapdoors with chutes so that bodies could fall into the basement. His basement was where all the work happened.
It's called the Murder Castle.
Well, that's what it was.
Yeah, that's nuts. Nah, it's not going to tell me exactly what.
No, that's what I mean. I found it.
Wow, 100 rooms.
Like I can see the blueprints. You can find the blueprints anywhere, but in-depth explanations, because it was only him that knew how anything worked. So all we know is what the police found afterwards. That's all the information we have.
Huh. Okay.
And the police found a lot of things. But yeah, the basement was the main thing. He had a human-sized crematorium oven thing to get rid of certain remains.
Yeah.
He also had vats of acid and bleach so that he could do, as we said earlier, strip the bodies and sell the skeletons.
Yeah.
And he did have one friend who worked with him, who he actually brought into this, and he was called Brian. I think it was, Benjamin Pitezel. I should also mention, in this period, he did get married again.
Oh, okay. So what happened to the original?
He was still married to her. He just
didn't
see her again.
So polygamy, huh?
Oh, yeah. By the end of his life, he was married to 3 people at once.
Okay. Well, that's not, like you said before,
the records were really
trash.
Yeah. So he was married to Myrta. And he had a little girl called Lucy, and his wife would always say that he was the perfect husband.
Mm-hmm.
He loved children. He loved animals. He was attentive, kind. She obviously had no. She did know about a couple of insurance scams, but she had obviously no knowledge of the whole murder mansion thing.
You know.
So yeah, the murder mansion itself is the crazy part, and like I said, he had all these ways of making money with these dead people. And it kind of came to, well, I won't say came to a head because it didn't come to an end, but it was the peak of his business was when the Chicago World's Fair came, because it was celebrating 400 years since Christopher Columbus discovered America, which I know he didn't. But
well, we didn't
won't get
realize
into
that. We didn't realize that at the time.
That is how they describe it.
Okay.
And obviously there were tons and tons of tourists coming to Chicago, and at that point there was a big sort of revolution on women working. So there was a lot of women going out on their own.
No.
So he started an employment agency for women.
Oh, okay.
Who he killed,
I guess. Oh well, you know.
So he would give them a job in one of these shops at the bottom of the murder hotel, take them into a room, or say that they've got, an apartment upstairs, and none of these rooms could open from the inside. Like only he could open them.
Yeah.
So obviously they go to these rooms, they die. Then the body's down a chute into the basement. He does what he's got to do.
Okay. It seems like quite a bit of work just to
It
sell
really
skeletons.
Does. Like this guy, I mean, just the sheer amount of things he did in such a short space of time, you're like, when did he sleep? Because he maintained a what she describes as a happy, attentive married life.
Yeah.
Along with, dissecting, experimenting, and stripping human remains, and drawing out plans for murder castles, and
yeah, I mean,
like, where did he get the time?
Well, my question is, he did this just for the skeletons? So,
No.
I mean, it seems like a lot of work just to be able to sell skeletons.
No, sometimes he sold the cadavers to like the universities, because that is something that the medical community don't like to admit, but we all know that, back in those days it was a big business selling. Like a lot of people, there was a lot of grave robbers at that time, so they'd go dig up the bodies and then sell them to universities.
See, that's why what I was talking about earlier, while you're alive, you have to, and now don't 100% quote me on this, because I know that there are shady dealings in the world. To think there aren't is, I'm not going to use the word ignorant, but, come on.
Yes.
While you're alive, you have to sign away your body's rights when you pass.
Yes.
That way, when you pass, only your body. Somebody can't come up and be like, "Oh yeah, well I got this body here. I'd like to sell it to you." Well, that's not how that works anymore. Back in those days, probably did.
Oh yeah.
Not probably had no problem doing it. Today, you have to do it, and let's be honest. It's a terrible thing. It sounds awful, but we do need practice on, cadavers. We need practice on dead bodies in order to further science.
I mean, I understand that,
science,
but obviously, there's ways to go about it.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, then we get to Benjamin.
Yeah.
Benjamin Pitezel, as I said before, he was a heavy drinker, and he was a bit dumb. Like, he was large. Like, Holmes liked to keep him around because he was big. He could handle a fight. And he started kind of letting him into his business and how he made money. There's a story of him showing Benjamin a body that had been stripped of its skin, and there were bits of flesh missing, which, led people to then look into this. It was H.H. Holmes, a cannibal thing, but I don't think it was. I don't think that's what it was all.
Okay.
So yeah, he knew about all this, and in 1894, he had convinced Benjamin that they would, because I think Benjamin needed some money. He had a wife and 3 children. He did odd jobs for Holmes, but he didn't have a career. And as far as I know, the wife just stayed at home with the children. So they needed some money, and Holmes had convinced him how easy these insurance scams were. said they would get a cadaver and fake Benjamin's death so his wife could claim the insurance money.
Mm-hmm.
So Holmes then murdered Benjamin, obviously.
Because he needed money.
Well, H.H. Holmes didn't need money.
Not him. I'm talking about Benjamin.
Yeah, Benjamin needed money. So H.H. Holmes murdered Benjamin and claimed the insurance himself.
Mm-hmm.
Which, for some reason, the wife seemed okay with. I don't understand what was going on there. Holmes went back to the wife, because the wife was in on this. She'd been told that they were going to replace Benjamin's body with a cadaver and fake his death.
Okay.
So Holmes went and said, "Oh, we've done it. Like, here's some of the money, I guess. Benjamin's hiding away right now, but because he doesn't want to be caught.
Yeah.
But he really misses his kids, so I'm going to take the kids to him."
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. So the wife, being the super intelligent person she obviously was, said, "Okay, take my 3 children to their father who has suddenly disappeared."
All right.
So H.H. Holmes takes these children. I'm not sure of the ages, but I know they were young children.
Yeah.
Like, they weren't babies, but they were young. There was a little boy called Howard, who I think was the youngest, and then there was 2 girls, Alice and Nellie.
All right.
And Holmes didn't murder them straight away. Funnily enough, he travelled across America with them. I'm not sure why. He eventually murdered Howard in Indianapolis. He rented an apartment there. Murdered him, cut up his body, burnt it, and stuffed it up a chimney. From what I can gather.
Oof, yeah. Back then, chimneys were a terrifying thing. Because we've always had chimney sweeps, but what they don't want. Well, it's not that they don't want you to know. It's just children back in those days would be hired as chimney sweeps.
Oh yeah, my
and then
favorite.
They would clean them out, and then they would get stuck in there,
Yeah.
and then you'd have to burn them out.
There was one of my favorite books when I was young was called The Water Babies by Charles Kingsley, and that was about a little boy that was a chimney sweep.
Okay.
He was called Tom. He was really tiny and.
Yeah. Well, see, I mean, I only bring that up because that's probably what he would have been able to say. It's
like a cover story.
Yeah, it's a good cover story, considering that was not an uncommon thing back then.
Well, that answers my next question, because what I've always wondered, and I mean for years, is what did he tell these 2 little girls?
It's just...
Like, it's strange enough that he would travel across the country with them instead of just murdering them wherever.
Yeah.
But, what did he tell these little girls? Because apparently they were writing letters to their parents.
Well,
to their mother, sorry. Yeah. Though Holmes never mailed the letters. We only know about these because the police found them in his possession.
Okay.
And the little girls say Howard is no longer with us.
Okay.
But they don't seem upset. They're saying that Holmes is treating them well. They're having fun. They're on their way to Canada.
Death was a more common thing back then. I mean, like I said, the Wild West was a thing then. I mean, death was very common. Think of all the diseases. I mean, heck, they had cholera back then. Could you imagine cholera?
I mean, I hadn't really thought of that so much. It just seemed very strange to me that you'd be able to explain that away to these 2 girls.
Like I said, little kids getting stuck, and it could be girls too. It wasn't specifically boys.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
They'd go up there, they'd get stuck, they'd end up dying from starvation or suffocation or something like that, and then you'd have to start a fire and burn that body out. It's terrible.
Oh yeah.
But that it happens. Not like today where people dying is a freak accident, or they passed away, or maybe they had a heart attack or something, or a construction accident, because I've had some of my role models growing up died that way, and it was awful. But people died in chimneys all the time back then. So they're I don't know how old the children were. Maybe they had been exposed to more death than you'd like to admit.
Yeah,
a child being stuck with. But at that time, they're probably like, oh, that sucks, or they mourn for however long they need to mourn, and they write these letters, and
It,
it's like, okay, I've gotten over it.
it also gets me that even, because I'm guessing these children were at least like 8 years old.
Okay.
They were probably
We
around
don't
my
actually
daughter's
have
age.
we actually don't have timestamps or anything for how old they were.
I couldn't find it. The
Okay.
information will be out there, I'm sure,
Yeah.
but I couldn't find it recently. I know I've seen it before
Yeah.
in a book or something, but they were. I have it in my head that they were around my daughter's age.
Okay.
So yeah, they finally got to Toronto, where he murdered and sexually assaulted the little girls.
Of course.
Because that's something that doesn't come into it much, but there is, like, it is suspected that rather than how most serial killers start because of a sexual drive,
Mm-hmm.
it's suspected that he developed one as he went along.
Okay.
Which would make sense, I guess,
Well,
in a kind of strange serial killery way.
I mean, so was it necrophilia, or was he a pedophile? Or a pedophile, as y'all call it?
No, I don't think it was either. I think it was the act of killing. I forget the name. There is a name for it. People who get sexual gratification from the act of killing rather than, any other element. So it could be a child, it could be an adult, it could be a man, it could be a woman. It's the act of killing that gives them the sexual release.
Well, my question was, you said that murdered and sexually assaulted. Was it he murdered them and then sexually assaulted, or was it sexually assaulted then murder?
From what I see, it was pre-mortem, so it was before he died.
Okay. So of course there was. Well, I guess you can't. I mean, you'd struggle under both circumstances. So, I really couldn't tell you. All right.
And then I'm guessing either their mother finally thought something was strange, or I know that he was wanted for a lot of insurance fraud, obviously.
Yeah.
He finally got arrested in Boston.
Okay, and both the children were, well, all three of the children were passed by then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the two girls, like I said, he sexually assaulted them and murdered them in Toronto. And buried their bodies, I believe.
All the way up in Canada. That dude is moving.
Yeah, he's moving around all right.
Well, he also went to England, didn't he?
I was going to come to that in a little while. His great grandchildren believe that he was Jack the Ripper. They've put out a lot of sort of material explaining why. He did have a house in Whitechapel at the time. It is suspected that he could have been there at that time, but I don't think it was him.
It doesn't fit his MO, does it?
And no, it doesn't. It just doesn't seem.
But he is a surgeon.
He is, but I just can't see it.
See, that's the thing. I mean, he Jack the Ripper killed prostitutes.
Yeah, Jack the Ripper was obviously, he obviously had something against prostitutes.
Yeah.
H.H. Holmes killed people because it was fun and because he wanted money. It doesn't fit any of that. What was he going to gain from that? And he'd always tried to cover up the bodies that he had not sold, or so I just couldn't see it.
Him sending stuff. What was it?
I will say it's one of the most well thought out theories that I've read regarding Jack the Ripper, but we'll obviously do an episode on that at some point.
Yeah.
Because there are some that are just ludicrous.
Ludicrous.
Ooh. Oh my god.
Oh man, thank you, Chris Rock, for putting that into perspective. The man says,
Oh yeah.
Rap used to be great. It told a story. Nowadays it's about move, bitch, get out the way. Thank you, Chris.
Well, obviously there was a bitch in his way.
And he wanted her to move. But I'm sorry.
Songwriting at its finest.
That's right. All right, so he's been all over the place. He got caught. He got picked up. Did he get picked up for murder so he got picked up for...
He got picked up for insurance fraud.
Insurance fraud, and then everything else followed.
I believe that an investigator looked into the death of Benjamin because he thought there was something odd about the way the body was, I believe. I can't remember how he ended up murdering him, but I believe he set his head on fire or something. So it would have been very hard to conceal or make it look like natural causes, I guess. So I think that was what happened in the end. Well, not the end. There's not really much of an end to this story. There's things still going on to this day. But he then confessed to the insurance fraud, and he put out his memoirs, but obviously not admitting murdering them, but not at that point.
Yeah.
But he became notorious. People thought of him as like some celebrity, like, oh, this guy's so clever. Look at, all these scams he pulled off, obviously, before they knew he was a murderer. But the detectives obviously found these letters on him when he got arrested, and that led him to find the remains of the children.
Okay.
So at this point, Holmes knew he was done, knew he was notorious, enjoyed that, wanted to make some money, so he put out his confessions in a book. He confessed to the murder of 27 people, though records of people, because a lot of the people, obviously, as I said, he kind of sold the rooms as a hotel during the World's Fair.
Yeah.
So police looked at records of people that were supposed to have stayed there and that had gone missing, and they believe he murdered about 200 people.
200? Wow.
In all reality, it could be a lot more. Could be a lot less.
I mean, I know that to some degree you got to keep records. Why would you keep records of who stayed in your hotel?
Yeah, especially if you're murdering them.
Yeah, well, especially at that day and age. And yes, again, if you're murdering them.
His confessions were very theatrical, to say the least. You can listen to bits of them now, but they're not made widely available. I forget whose possession they're in, but they're in one person's possession, and though they're allowing clips to be used and heard, you can't really get access to the full confession. But yeah, it was very theatrical. He said he was born with the devil inside him, that he couldn't help being a murderer, just like a poet couldn't help writing songs.
Ah, yes. As you know, because everybody thinks they're a freaking artist.
Yes.
So, oh God. Yeah, no, everybody thinks they're something better than they are. Look, Homer Simpson is a doofus.
Yes.
He's not a nuclear engineer.
No.
He is a health inspector that doesn't do anything. Doesn't make him a nuclear engineer.
No.
It's like working at Pizza Hut and saying you're a pizza.
Yes.
Everybody wants to be an artist.
Well, I'm not sure if serial killing is really an art, but if it was, I would say this guy is an artist.
He is Picasso. This dude was nuts.
It's insane. Like I said, it's really hard to, like, on some of these episodes, especially like the Robert Black one, it was very hard for me because you think of these people and they're vile and it's awful, and in this case it kind of is, but it's just that insane that you just look at him as some supervillain. That's the only word I can ever use to describe him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Like, ever since this, obviously some of the first horror movies had characters based off him. There was one, I forget the name of the movie, it was a black and white movie, and there was a character named Dr. X who was experimenting on human bodies in a basement.
Well, it's a good thing that here he got his doctorate.
Yeah.
Because he's Mr. X.
Oh dear.
And he became Dr. X.
I'm sorry.
I bet he gave it to him.
Oh dear.
Knock on the door.
But yeah, so he put out these confessions. He said that there was only one murder that he regretted, and that was the murder of Minnie Williams, who was, I think he'd employed her as a receptionist at the hotel. Yes.
You know what? Is that short for something?
I'm not sure. I couldn't find out, but she had a sister called Nanny, so I don't think it was.
Huh. Okay. Well, that's fine. I'm just, the only Minnie I know is Minnie Mouse.
Yeah. He wanted her to marry him.
Okay.
And he said he regretted murdering her because he was actually in love with her. But from what I gather, she rejected him.
Oh, well.
But she had a huge inheritance.
Oh, okay.
So he lured the sister out to Chicago, murdered her in the hotel, and took Minnie on a train ride. I'm not sure if he like I said, records weren't what they were, so he'd murdered her, said he was her husband, and claimed the inheritance.
Oh.
So yeah, that was the only one he regretted, apparently.
Okay. See, I don't know. You get so many people that, you're talking about over 200. I mean, this guy with such an amazing.
I mean, if you listen to the story, it's very conceivable that it could be 200 people, if not more.
Well,
I mean, it's just crazy.
Well, I'm listening to it. I'm thinking, this is freaking nuts. 200 people.
I've been saying to you, like, for ages, this one's the insane one, this one's mental.
Yeah, we've talked about him before, and, all I can say is he's the freaking Jigsaw killer.
He's crazy.
He's the Jigsaw killer.
He was probably what that was based off, to be honest.
Well, I guess we'll never know. I'm not going to ask the director or producer of that movie.
No, it wasn't a good movie.
I liked the first one. I did. I thought that was a neat idea.
I liked the story, but I didn't like how they went about it.
And the dude from Princess Bride was in it. And I was like, whoa!
No, that movie's a classic.
Oh, I was like, dude, sweet. Where's it? Friggin'. Oh, God, I can't even remember the dude's name.
Do the line.
I can't. I don't remember his name.
Is it Montoya?
It's like Akira Montoya or something.
Montoya.
It's like something Montoya. It's like, you killed my father.
Prepare to die.
It's like, oh, this is so cool.
No, that was.
That is why every kid my age wanted to learn how to fence. And everybody did it. They'd always be like, we had our little lightsabers or whatever, and we pointed at each other and be like, blah, my name is Josh. You killed my father, or my name is Josh. You ate my sandwich. Prepare to die.
Oh yeah, no, we did that too.
Oh yeah, but,
even the girls.
Yeah, well, I can imagine. It's just fun. It's just fun.
So, yeah, so he was hanged in 1897, I believe.
He was hung.
He was hung.
Was he hung like a horse? Okay, so they hung him.
Yes, though I think the correct term is hanged.
I've looked
at this before.
Him hanged. They had him hung.
No, I don't think hung is the correct term. I've looked at this before. I believe grammatically it is they hanged him.
They hanged him proper grammar.
I love how you search for things. Like, you don't do like most
Standard
people would.
Rules, past tense of hang. In almost all situations, you would use the word hung. I hung a picture of Noah Webster on the wall. After school, she hung out in the library. Use hanged when referring to a person being suspended
that's it.
Okay.
I knew that I'd seen that.
All right,
yeah.
Cool. Well, look at me learning stuff.
I knew that you weren't supposed to say hung.
But okay, so they both mean the same thing, but they're only used separately based on
hung is an inanimate object.
It says here that hanged. Well, see, again, she said I hung out with, she hung out.
Oh yeah, well that's the different context altogether.
It's just with hanged, they use it to refer by death by hanging.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so he was hanged.
So he was hanged like a horse.
And apparently the hanging didn't go smoothly. His neck did not snap, and it took him 20 minutes to die.
Suffocation.
His final wish was that he was buried and encased in cement so that no one could dissect his corpse.
Oh,
ironically.
Okay, cool.
And then this leads me to I believe the most recent bit of news with H.H. Holmes. His family had also come up with this theory that he never got hanged, that he'd escaped, and they hanged someone else.
You know what? Wait a minute. Was he the dude with Harry Houdini? I remember seeing sometime, and
it's possible it was around that time, but I'm not sure H.H. Holmes and Harry Houdini had any acquaintance.
Well, see, that's the thing. There's this huge thing.
I have read a big book on that.
There's this huge thing looking into, and it might not be, Triple H here.
Right.
but they said that they weren't friends, but they knew each other well enough or something. And
You could possibly be right because Harry Houdini did
there
get
was,
around a bit.
well, I saw this documentary about 2 years ago with, I believe it was H.H. Holmes, but stating that it wasn't his body.
Yeah.
And like, or maybe it was Harry Houdini that it wasn't his body. There was some connection there. Maybe.
Oh no, it says that he met Houdini at the World's Fair, but that's it. Like,
Oh, okay.
They weren't like friends or.
Okay. Well, I mean.
Man, but
Houdini,
it did
that
turn
dude.
out they exhumed his body in 2017, and it did turn out to be his body. So
Okay.
there is rest put to that.
Well, that's good. I mean, I'd hate to think that that guy's dead somewhere else now.
But there is still the ongoing Jack the Ripper thing, which is, I don't think that's ever going to go away.
He's the most famous serial killer in all history. Of course, it's not going away.
So, yeah, that's H.H. Holmes.
Yeah, that is.
I told you it would be.
Oh, that's fun.
Insane. It's a trip.
That guy's a nut job.
And there's a lot of information that, not that I left out purposely or anything, but there's just so much on him that's just, everything's crazy. Like I said, I don't know how he had the time.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'd love to see that murder castle.
Oh yeah, I would know. It's not. They built a post office on it. There is a man, I forget his name now, but he is in the process, I believe, of writing a book on H.H. Holmes, and I have seen a YouTube video of him going into the basement of the post office, just to see because where the post office has been put, there's only a tiny bit that overlaps with where the hotel would have been.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like in the exact same spot. So I did go under to see if there was anything there, but there's not, other than a few bricks that look like they could have possibly been part of the original structure.
Mm-hmm.
That's all there is there. But yeah, the basement was the big place where the police found, the police found like a torture device that they didn't even know what it did, and operating tables with women's clothes covered in blood, and
nice.
You know, like I'd said before, acid vats and vats of bleach and quicklime.
Yeah, could you imagine? You know, there's some nut out there that's like, "Ooh, did you know that this brick was a part of the murder castle?" And then you put it up on this pedestal.
That's really crazy as well, like the way the world's gone with how you sort of glamorize these things. I know that I've kind of got a bit fangirly here and been like, oh, supervillain. But in reality, he was a horrible human being.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, like, I don't know why people celebrate these things. Like Ed Gein's headstone had to be locked away because people kept trying to steal that. It's just not even to sell or anything, just to have Ed Gein's headstone. It's ridiculous.
Well, just think. and whenever when I was younger and we were learning about Jack the Ripper, you know, I always pictured, because that's how we pictured British people back in the day. We'd always be like, oh, he's got a monocle and he's got a top hat and he's got a cane and he's walking around saying, indubitably. And hello, Governor. Fancy a pot of tea, a spot of tea. There we go. Some crap like that. So, you know, if that were to be true and somebody found out that it was this person, they'd be like, oh crap, it's his monocle. You know, it's his top hat. And then we find out that actually Slash Thompson has owned his top hat this whole time.
Oh my God.
And we never knew. And then Slash Thompson's like, what, dude?
I could actually see that. I mean, I will say Slash Thompson is an idol.
I mean, you know, you'd look at it and be like, wow.
Oh yeah,
so
I mean,
much history.
I'd pay just for that hat anyway.
That's what I'm saying. You know, it's just
it's Slash's hat.
People glamorize this stuff. What was that? Ted 2? Or no, it was the original Ted movie with Mark Wahlberg.
Oh, that's terrible. That wasn't the original movie though.
What?
There was another movie called The Deliberate Stranger, which was actually a very good movie, and that was made while Ted was still in jail.
Ted?
Yeah.
With Mark Wahlberg.
Oh, I don't know that.
The
Oh, you're
teddy
talking.
bear.
I thought you meant the Ted Bundy movie.
No, I'm talking about Ted. The little
I don't.
stuffed,
Oh, I hated that
stuffed bear
movie.
that talks crap and
That
smokes
was
pot all the time.
terrible.
Well, he goes into the guy's house the guy who wants his girlfriend and all that kind of crap, and he's standing there and he's like, "Look, you see this?" And it's this little testicle just sitting on a
Oh,
mat, and
I know.
he's like, "Yeah, you see that? You see that? That's Armstrong's testicle. Yeah, I had it bronzed."
That's just.
Makes
Ugh.
me realize that no matter how bad life can get, it still can't get that bad. It's like, what the
God.
crap?
I hated that
Oh,
movie.
shush. You're terrible.
I am, though I did love Dude, Where's My Car, so I can't say anything.
Those are totally different things.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying it's a terrible movie.
Those two were being stupid for the sake of being stupid.
That's what Ted was.
No,
it
it
was a
wasn't.
teddy bear being stupid for the sake of
He
being
wasn't
stupid.
being stupid. He had his own logic, and he was smart enough and elevated enough.
He was not smart. He was a dumb teddy bear. Oh my God! Right.
Whatever.
Yeah, we're supposed to be teaching people about H.H. Holmes, and they're listening to us have this random conversation about movies.
Oh no! Anything but random
But yes,
conversation.
that was H.H. Holmes.
Oh, that was a fun one, wasn't it?
Yeah, I hope. Even if obviously I may have left a couple of details out, I do hope that people learned something new because my research into this subject was
I
deep.
learned something new. And I believe you learned something new as well. There's quite a bit of.
Oh yeah, it was fun today.
Yeah, no, this was absolutely a blast. And thank you all guys for listening.
Yes.
Y'all have a wonderful day.